Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry Consulting. So inspiring, pushing you to your dream.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. I'm your host, Crystal Petry. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure and subscribe to my channel right now. On this week's episode of 60 Minutes With, I am sitting down with an artist, but not just any kind of artist, a landscape artist. I know, I had never heard of it either. So if you are like me, we're excited about this podcast because we are going to learn so much. And here to educate me and educate you, we have Emily Lewis, our landscape artist. Oh my God, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I love the intro. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited about this. So my previous guest, Jennifer, was like, I have the perfect person for you. Her name is Emily. She's an artist. So I was like, okay. And then she was like, she's a landscape artist. I was like, mind blown. Because I've never heard of a landscape artist outside of Bob Ross. Which, you know, I feel like enough people know who Bob Ross is. The Afro, if you don't know who Bob Ross is.
The Happy Trees.
The Happy Trees. After you finish this podcast, then go and Google Bob Ross. But, okay, so you're a landscape artist. What exactly does that mean?
So basically, I just choose for my subject matter when I'm creating artwork. I specialize in landscapes.
Okay.
And that can mean a variety of things. It could be I'm outside in my backyard and I'm like, oh, that composition looks perfect. And then I'll just draw exactly what I see. But what I love to do is I will look at images from around the world on like copyright-free websites. Or if I have the opportunity to travel and take the photos myself, and then I play this what-if game, where I think of, what if this was a dark romantic setting? Or what if this was a different dimension and play into that fantasy? And that's where my craft really evolves. So, but landscape artists, we're popular, we're everywhere, we're just kind of hidden.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I love it. Landscapes are, I think, just as complex as humans. So whenever I'm diving into it, it's so fun to nitpick, where's this tree going to go? How am I going to render this tree to tell this compelling story within my work?
And why is that important? Like where to put the tree, where to put the clouds and the sun? Why is that important?
That's a great question. For me, because my work often has a underlining message or a narrative often where I'm trying to tell a story with trees or with flowers, where I put them can help emphasize my point or reveal something that I'm trying to tell the audience of why is this flower so big, or even prompt them to ask those questions, to think of why did she choose this decision, and make them look at it and ponder and try to find their own meaning. Because often with work you want to have that space for conversation where I can show you a painting even like this, and we have different opinions of what it's telling. Even though the artist might have their own intention, for me personally, I think it's so important to leave interpretation open, because interpretation is going to happen no matter what. So for me, going over those little minute details are pretty important. You don't want to spend too much time on them, but giving them some thought is pretty important for whatever it is I'm trying to achieve.
Your narrative, you said with your artwork, with your paintings, you want to tell a story. How do you know what story you want to tell with each painting?
Ooh, sometimes it's something personal. I'm currently developing a series talking about grief where the subject matter is a tree, and the tree is being depicted in different stages of my interpretation and personal experience with it. So sometimes the narrative comes from my personal experience. Other times it's fully constructed. One of my thesis works created a narrative of a menacing castle and a isolated figure within it. I don't have any experience with that, but I constructed it and then thought, okay, how is this going to look? So it really depends. Sometimes it's a play of imagination, sometimes it's just personal experience.
As an artist, why did you select paint as your tool to use?
That actually just was like a natural evolution. When I came to Lamar, I was a drawing concentration, and I was trained on charcoal, and I still use charcoal as my go-to medium. But then as I was working on it, I had a natural pull to digital, because of just like, as it evolved, you know, digital painting is the industry standard, with a lot of like animation companies, which is what I intended to do. I wanted to be a concept artist, so I wanted to learn that. But then as my education progressed, it became more illustrative, and then I leaned more into the color. So it was like this natural flow, and I just kind of followed what was being pulled to me, and I didn't fight it. I had this horrible habit of trying to fight against what my mind was wanting to do, and that was terrible. But it just kind of landed where I have these pieces that will depict these bright, vivid colors, and then contrast with the charcoals of the textures. So that's where I'm at now.
Landscape artist, as I stated before, I had never really heard of it outside of Bob Ross, obviously. But when I think of like art and painting, I'm thinking of like something like this, people in there or whatever. Why landscape?
So it was funny, it just naturally happened. When I first came in, I wanted to paint people so badly.
Okay.
I was like, I'm painting people. I'm going to be a figurative painter, period, the end. But I kept having trouble with it. There were certain things, they were very expressive, yes, but they weren't what I was wanting to do. And I remember it was an assignment that I did where it was a self-portrait of me, and my professor made a comment that the background looked very good. It was very well rendered. And then the next work I did, there was no figure. And that became so easy. Like something clicked subconsciously, and I still don't quite know how, but the backgrounds became so easy to render that I just started focusing on that, and that's when I really think my work just started taking off, where the complexity was able to go up in scale. I was able to feel like I was able to tell more with what I was doing with just a little simple thing. One of my professors always said, and it's funny, I didn't realize it until just this moment, where she said, every piece you make tells you what your next piece is going to be. And it was that exact moment where the comment of, your background looks great. So then I made a background, I made a landscape, and then every single one after that just kept telling me where I needed to go. And it's so weird of just like, what your professors say truly matter. You don't know when it's going to click, but it'll click eventually.
Yes.
So that's how I got into landscapes.
You just had an aha moment.
I did. I had an aha moment right here.
Yes. So this is two questions.
Mm-hmm.
When and why did you decide that being an artist would be your career path?
So it's really funny. I originally wanted to be a masseuse when I was in high
Really?
school. Yes.
Okay.
I was in high school, junior year, and I was like, I'm going to be a massage therapist. That's what I wanted to do. Just something working with my hands. And it was like the summer before my senior year. My sister's birthday was coming up, and of course we were 90s kids, so we loved Disney, and Ariel was her favorite, and I don't know why. I've always doodled as a kid. My grandpa drew for fun. I was like, I'm going to draw her a picture of Little Mermaid. And I don't know what happened, but something clicked in my brain where this picture looked like Ariel. It looked very good, and I've never drawn anything like this before. And I showed it to him. I was like, hey, look what I did. And they're like, how did you do this? I'm like, I don't know. So then I started doing that more and more. I joined art club senior year of high school, and then I sat my parents down because I sat them down and went, guys, I'm going to go to college for art. And they went, yeah. Was there another option? We didn't think there was another option. And I was like, oh, I didn't know we were okay with this. But they were like,
I love it.
Absolutely, yes. And so that's where it was. It just kind of happened one day. Because every kid, my nieces still draw and doodle, and they have fun with it. But it wasn't anything noteworthy. And then once I just had this spark that just happened, then I really started to nurture it and train and practice more and more and more. And then I went to college for it, and here I am.
Okay, I know that we're talking about art and we're talking about landscape, but I want to pivot just a second here. During the few minutes that we've been sitting down, I have noticed something about you, that you are really brave, and I say brave, and really bold about following your intuition. So with the initial painting of like the self-portrait, and your professor was like, well, the background looks really great. So like, you just intentionally moved to that. And then with this situation, with the painting or the drawing for your sister, you loved it and you just naturally went into that.
Right.
Most people would never do that. They're not bold enough or courageous enough to just follow what their mind and their body and their spirit is telling them to do. Where did that come from with you?
Well, thank you for that. I don't think I've been described as bold or brave, but I appreciate that. And honestly, so I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 12.
Okay.
And, part of it is impulsivity. But one of the coolest things I've learned from working and being a student here at Lamar is in the art department, there are so many of us that are either on the spectrum, have ADHD, are neurotypical, and there's so many advantages to that. Whether it be our work ethic, our perspective on things, or even like what you said of that impulsivity working with me with this career that I've chosen, of quickly able to pivot and chase this new dopamine, this new project. And one of the things that's really great about it is it breaks up the monotony of just grinding out the same thing over and over versus there's a wide variety and versatility of, well, I just chase this new project, so then my portfolio is very diverse. I have a bunch of different interests. These creates all these cool things that work with us as artists that I think is so unique to our field. So I would say that's where it comes from.
Wonderful. And make sure you stick around because Emily's going to show us some of her amazing artwork, the diversity in her artwork, and we're going to show it and we're going to talk about it. So make sure and stick around for that. If someone is wanting to be an artist, what do you think are some things that maybe they need to know to enter this career field? What are some things that maybe they need inside of them to be successful in this field?
Ooh, great question. And I try to tell as many students this as possible. I was taught this. Talent doesn't mean as much as they think it does. Talent is where you start. You can have zero talent, but if you work hard and you want it, that can get you farther than someone that has a ton of talent but doesn't nurture it. So a talent is just where you start at. So I would say don't equal talent to success. As long as you put in the hours, you're willing to work at it, that can mean more than talent. Also, don't be afraid. Obviously, like with artists, there's a ton of introverts, so it's trying to get them comfortable with putting themselves out there. Because being an artist where networking is so important, case in point, us being here right now, not only knowing how to talk about yourself, your work, but just how to talk to people in general, trying to get them comfortable with managing small talk in an effective way where you don't have to put yourself out there or be super personable, but you need to know how to navigate these situations because opportunities are going to come when you talk to people. And trying to get them used to that and practice your sketchbook. It's a bad habit that I've formed where I don't sketch enough, but mistakes are going to happen and your sketchbook is your safety net. Make as many ugly drawings as you want in your sketchbook. Make them ugly, make them hideous. That's what the sketchbook is for. But I would say those of be comfortable talking to people, find a way that works for you to talk to people, to approach people, make art, make it, because that's the only way you're going to get better, and don't compare yourself to someone that's been in the field for 20 plus years when you are just now starting. It's super hard not to do that, but it can really crush someone when you're just trying to chase something that's not achievable because you're not that person. So I would say those three things.
Okay. Now, whenever, as an artist, how do you know which brushes to choose for, like, is it the same brush for the tree that you're doing with the clouds? Or, because when I go in, like, the art places like Michael's or even Walmart, it's like a ton of brushes.
Oh, there's so many.
So many. I'm like, how do you even know which one to pick?
So with my digital brushes, it's honestly become so subconscious now where I don't have to think about it. But what I do when I'm looking for a specific texture, I think that's really what I go by. I know what texture I'm wanting, and I'll just kind of click through the brushes until I see one that works. One of the weirdest things, and I love it, it's one of my favorite brush sets that I have, when I'm rendering rock textures, there was a brush set that I found where they were like, oh, you're painting felines, you're painting cats, use this brush set. But it looks so good for rocks. and like those hard textures. So I use this cat brush for rendering all my rocks, and I'm like, it works. For my charcoals, I love to use painting brushes to blend the charcoals. So that one's a little more, I would say, methodical, because I like softer brushes for specific things. If I'm doing like waters or super soft shadows, then I'll go with a really soft brush. If I'm trying to get like the tree texture for charcoals, then I'll go with more bristles, which is a harder texture. So with my charcoals, there's a little more thought of size and textures. With digital, it's kind of more of a free-for-all, where I'm just like, I just picked this airbrush, worked really good right here, we're gonna go with that.
I love your energy. I love your energy. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what about the paint? How do you know like what type of paint to use, what colors you want to use?
So I love colors, and I love presenting colors in a different light. So for me, the process is, what is the emotion or narrative that I'm trying to say? There's a few where I have like a lot of bright, vivid reds that can come off menacing. So then I'll know I want a more saturated, classic fire truck red. And that comes from my color theory experience of knowing what does color mean to the general public. Everyone's going to see red and they're going to have a general feeling. So it's a bit of knowing that, and knowing, oh, my light source is yellow, so my shadows are going to pull cool tones. So a bit of my training is within the color theory, but there is that level of just seeing what happens. There's sometimes I know if I'm wanting that extra pizzazz or that color. We can even look up here where there's these blue tones. Yes. There's that level of experimentation where technically it might not be what it would really look like, but it looks good, it looks interesting, it has that level of spark that I'm looking for. So everything I do has that level of experimentation, but also has that methodical training that I was trained with.
We've talked about Bob Ross a little bit here, and you know, he does landscape artistry. What do you think of Bob Ross and his landscape artistry?
So Bob Ross, obviously within the art community, you know, he's meme. He's a meme. Everyone loves him. The happy trees, happy accidents.
Yes.
He definitely falls into what is like the party painter, which is just trying to get people comfortable with painting. So he's really great for people who have never painted before. I used to work for a painting company that did something similar. So he's a great entryway to get people comfortable sitting down and saying, look, it doesn't matter if you've ever drawn before a day in your life, you can do this. There's obviously some like cutting corners or techniques that he does to just quickly do a thing. So, but he's very fun. I personally don't have an offense when someone says, oh, this reminds me of Bob Ross. If it's like a general public, because that's what they know. I'm just happy they're talking about art, or they know something about a landscape to compare it to. So, but he's very fun. I don't have any issues with him.
What have you learned about yourself, Emily, as an artist?
Oh gosh, I'm still a perfectionist. I'm trying so hard not to be, because the mediums I've chosen, being a digital painter and charcoal. With digital, you have a level of control because you can undo it, but especially with charcoal, you always want to let your painting tell you what it wants to be. You always want to leave that room for letting go, and I'm still working on that. I still overcomplicate things very much. No matter how many times I sit down, I'm like, I know exactly what I want. This is a simple thing. It's never simple. It's never simple. So, but it is learning more about myself as I paint, of where I am mentally. Whenever I was developing my grief series, there was a few times where I was like, oh, I'm still dealing with this. I didn't realize I was still struggling with this 3 years after my dad passed, but I'm still here. And it was so interesting to see how that evolved, which compositions came super easy because I knew exactly what I felt, or which ones I don't quite know because I'm still dealing with it. So it's very interesting, very personable sometimes to learn about yourself through your work. So.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, what have you unlearned about yourself to become a better artist?
That is a great question. I'm very proud of myself because I have finally learned, or was able to stop the comparisons. Whenever I follow or I look at art, because that's how you learn, you absorb as much as you can. Originally it came from a sense of competitiveness, where I was like, this is the new standard I need to have. This is the person I need to beat. And that's so unhealthy and unobtainable. And now it's, this is amazing. Why do I love this? What technique can I incorporate in my work to have this effectiveness? So, and that took a bit, but that was one of the biggest things I had to unlearn. And again, to just learn to let go. Create work for yourself. Create those ugly pieces for yourself to learn. So those were the biggest things I had to tackle.
Okay, so a couple tangible questions here. How long, if you can give me a time frame, did it take you to get to that point of, okay, I'm just going to do me, I'm going to learn and absorb, but in the end, I'm going to do what I feel is right?
I think it was definitely apparent in my final semester, because your thesis, you're making your own work. You're creating the series that you want to do. So having that level of freedom after, creating assignment after assignment was a breath of fresh air. It was great. But really, I think it was about a year and a half ago that I really started to notice the freedom that I now was having with art. And that just came with time of, once you graduate, you pump out art for 4 years straight. So everyone kind of hits that wall where you're like, I need a break. I need to just kind of take a second. But I've always noticed once you come back, it's like you go into the second form of yourself as an artist, where you take a step back, you take that break, and you're like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to start saying? And that's where you'll see a lot of artist shifts. Jennifer, who you previously interviewed, she came in with photography, and now she leans towards more installations, more carpentry, more evolved work. I came in wanting to do concept art and portraits, and now I do landscapes. So it's always that break that I think is where you start to see those things you're trying to change start to change. So I would say the past year and a half it became apparent.
Okay. Do you sell your art?
I do, yes. I have an online shop. I used to do commission work, but I shifted to just doing an online shop because it's easier to maintain, and it's what's called passive income, where I just upload the image and the website takes care of manufacturing, shipping, all that other thing. So it's a bit more easier for me to manage. I sell it there, and then if I do in-person galleries or if I have work, sometimes I'll have them available for sale. We have the Grand Ball, and I have 2 pieces up available for auction. So yeah, I'm very big about selling my work. I try to tell my students, sell your work.
If someone wants to purchase your artwork, how do they do that? What is the website?
So I sell my work at Fine Arts America /Emily Lewis Cesaro. I have a link on my Facebook page and all my socials where you can purchase it there, and then you have an access to my whole gallery. There are certain artworks that I don't have on there for various reasons, but you have about, I think right now it has 21 images available for sale. And what I love about the website is you can get prints, you can get canvas, but you can also get stuff like bags, shower curtains, like floor mats, a bunch of really interesting designs that I never thought my artwork would look good on, because that's not what they were made for. But what I love about it is they have so many options for people that can just buy things with my artwork on it, and it's really cool.
Okay. And could you give us that website one more time, a little slower?
It's Fine Arts America /Emily Lewis Cesaro, Zazzaro.
Perfect. How do you know how much to sell your artwork for?
So again, for me, where I'm at now, it's pretty easy for me to give a general price. It kind of just where I roughly think about how long did I work on it, how much materials did I use, and then I'm able to get an idea of, oh, it will fall into this ballpark. What I tell people who are starting out is there's 2 ways to really calculate it. You can calculate how much materials did it cost. If a painting cost you 100 materials, then you'll want to start with about $200. That way you make your money back, and then you get a profit. And then if you feel like it needs to be higher, you can go from there. Or you can do it hourly. So set yourself, I want to make $15 an hour, and then I worked on this piece for 20 hours. So then you'll just times it by that, and that'll give you an idea. But that's what I used to do, but now I'm just able to kind of gauge, this feels like a $300 piece or a $400 piece. So.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking this question is, a lot of times when you hear about artists, except like the super famous ones, obviously, you hear broke artists.
Right.
And you know, when you were telling the story how you had to sit your parents down and I'm gonna go to art school, I was like, probably because she was thinking they were thinking that she's gonna be a broke artist. We're gonna have to take care of her.
They want the 9 to 5.
We're gonna have to feed her for the rest of our lives.
Exactly.
But can people make a living and feed themselves and take care of themselves being an artist?
Absolutely. One of the trickiest things, and you'll hear people talk about this, even people that are top of the game, they always talk about this. It's all about finding your audience. People, commission work is easy because you have people wanting, like, I want a project, I want to do this. But if you're wanting to make and sell your own work, once you find that crowd that wants your work specifically, that is the hardest part, but that's where the money is. They're well-known artists. They paved the way for fantasy art in museums. They're called Julie Bell and Boris Vallejo. They were the ones that showed fantasy work could be just as important as the classical media. So now they have that massive crowd that loves the fantasy work, but trying to find that's the struggle part. That's the part where the starving artist comes from, is the people trying to find that crowd for them. So yes, you can absolutely make work as an artist. It's difficult. It's a very competitive field. I won't lie about that, but there are absolutely, especially today's day and age where media is top of the game, some of the best it's ever been. They're out there. You just got to find them.
If someone wants to be an artist, what is the educational pathway to becoming an artist? Or do you have to go through an educational pathway?
No, not necessarily. One of the artists I looked at for my thesis, his screen name is WLOP. He has some of the most iconic work with fantasy work, in my opinion. He is completely self-taught. And looking at him for my thesis, it was kind of ironic. I'm looking at someone that was self-taught for my academia, like, thesis level, but it really just depends on the person. I knew personally I flourish better in a structured education environment, so college was the option for me. But there are tons of artists out there who have quote-unquote made it, who have found their audience, who are making a living off of their work, that are purely self-taught. So it really just depends on the person of whatever is best for you. You can be self-taught, education, it's completely your choice.
What do you think needs to be done to get more people into the world of art, more artists, more youth, teenagers is kind of what I'm thinking about right now, interested in the world of art?
I think getting rid of the fear or the idea that I can never do that. Because it's, again, when they look at it, they're seeing the finished product, but they're not thinking about how long did it take for that person to get there. Like, none of us woke up one day and just painted this, and if you did, oh my gosh, like, get into class tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
But it's that fear and that comparison of, I can only draw this, I can never achieve that, that's impossible. And it's completely false, and it keeps so many people held back from what they could do because there is this fear of failure is really what it is. So I would say that is just getting rid of that fear and not being afraid to ask questions. Ask dumb questions, ask all the questions, because you're not going to know until you ask the questions. So just the fear of failure, I think, would get more people in.
You know, I was thinking about this story that I heard as you were talking, and I don't know if it's true, it probably isn't, but the story goes like this. A woman walked up to Picasso in a restaurant or something he's eating, and so she's like, oh my God, you know, you're a Picasso, can you draw something?
Yes.
You know the story?
I think so.
And so she gives him a napkin, he doodles something like in 3 minutes,
Right.
and then he's like, that's going to be $10,000. And so she's like, it only took you 2 minutes to draw that. Why is it $10,000? And so he was like, but it took me 20 years
Exactly.
to get to the point to where I could do this in 2 minutes.
And that's one of the things as an artist where I talk about finding your audience. You'll come across those people because there are people that don't understand that. They just want to pay the what I call the Hobby Lobby prices, where it's $20 for this image, and they just want to pay that. And you have the people that understand, especially if you're going to do fine art museums, you have the people that understand the craft and know the history behind every piece you make, what everything means. So it's, yeah, absolutely.
So much time. It's the time because, I mean, I'm a novice when it comes to art. You know, I'll look at a piece like when I came in, you know, we were looking at this piece. It's beautiful with the woman, you know, it's like she's held hostage. The men are all around her. It's like everyone's fussing at her. So I'm just like, oh, that's beautiful. But how long it took the artist to like come up with this and paint, like that never entered my mind.
No, and it's outside of the materials too. It's that, again, like you said, that training, that history. How much did it take to get here that people often don't think about?
Yes. So Emily, what is your personal intention in the world of art?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say it's to just tell stories. I love telling stories. I've always been very imaginative as a kid. I love stories. So I would say it's to just create work and that have a narrative that hopefully speak and resonate with people. I know that might sound a bit cliche, but it's really what it is. Just create work that can be talked about, that can have a discussion, that sometimes might cause controversy, you know, but I would say it's just that, to create discussions.
Let's look at some of your art pieces that I thought were amazing. Amazing. Okay, so the first one, let's tell me about this one. It's the Sunset Over the Sea. And for me, I felt like I was at the beach when I looked at this piece. Because I feel like that's what everybody kind of goes to the beach to see, like the sunset or the sunrise.
Yes.
But it just brought me back in time to a place when I was at the beach and I could see the sunset and I could see the sunrise.
Oh,
so tell me about that.
That was a bit of an experiment with lighting, in all honesty. I wanted to play with either, you know, the sunset or sunrise and what that would look like, because I realized at that moment a lot of my pieces took place in bright lighting. And I was like, let me mix it up. And I kind of fell onto a comfort, which I've realized my comfort in compositions is having a rock structure and water. I don't know where it came from, but anytime I want to experiment, there's always a rock structure and water. And it was that where as the lighting came in, all the tones softer. There was a version of it that was a lot more saturated and overstimulating, and then I pulled everything back to have that softer feel, which I'm very happy it went through. The feeling came through. So it was that where it started out as just wanting to experiment with lighting, and then it created this peaceful environment.
Well, let's look at this next piece. Now, this one is Water Lilies Over the Water. When I tell you I love this piece, like, you're going to hear me say that about all your pieces, because I really did love all your pieces. Okay, but this one that we're looking at, what I really loved about this one was like the reddish color, as though the sun is reflecting the water lilies. Is that like what you were going for with that?
That partially, yes. It was, again, playing with color. One of my painting professors, she's fantastic. When I was in her class, she noticed that I would take a composition and focus on really small things in it, where I would look at a water lily and focus only on the water lily. So I took that edit and was like, well, let me make a piece about it. And as I was developing it, it had that, it's missing something. And then it was playing with that color of, what if I trickle in some red? How will that look? What will that create? And it created that reflective light of, oh, something's reflecting off of it. What does this mean?
This next piece, I kid you not, Emily, I looked at this one for so long, trying to come up with my own interpretation. It's called The Gate.
Oh, that's a good one.
And for this one, I felt like, and I feel like this is life in general, that like all of the good and the happy and the peaceful and the joyful things that we want in life is just on the other side of the gate.
Yes.
So, okay, tell me about that piece.
So this one delves into a bit of surrealism, which is, it was a movement where Salvador Dali, where, to give the vague overterm, it's drawing from dreams. So it has this very weird, ethereal, otherworldly effect, and I kind of wanted to dip my toe into that. But it was, I think, pulling from experience, because at that point, it was still, that was one of the pieces that made me realize I'm still unpacking things from my father's death. And having that struggle with the turbulent waters, but knowing it's going to get better. I just have to wait it out. I just have to get through it and just pay attention and check in on myself. But I know it's going to get better. And it just took on this almost religious imagery, which I typically don't do within my work, but I leaned into it just a little bit here. And to have exactly what you said of, it's just on the other side. You just got to get to it. You just got to keep going and know it's going to be okay.
Oh my God, you said a whole word with that. Oh my God, that's so good. You know what? I did not catch, when I was looking at it, I didn't catch the other side of it, that if you just keep going, you will get to the happiness.
Yeah.
You will get to the peace. Oh.
It will, the struggles will end. You just have to keep going. And I know that's very hard depending on a lot of people's circumstances. But with my own, it did get better, thanks to my husband and friends and family. So yeah, it was really cool to just have a piece that kind of encapsulated all of that in one.
Yes. If someone wants to buy your pieces, by the gate. If someone wants to buy your pieces, how can they do that?
So you can do it, you can purchase it online through my shop. There's more coming out. I think the gate is available. You can do that. I've had people contact me directly if they want to buy a specific piece. And then I have it available for, like, we have our silent auction going on, but mostly through my shop is where you can best purchase it.
Okay.
If there's one that you saw on social media and you're curious about it, a private message, and I can give prices that way. So I'm very open to purchases.
And what is the address for your shop? Give us that information again.
So it's the Fine Arts America / Emily Lewis Zazzaro, Zazzaro. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Emily Lewis Zazzaro as well. I think my Instagram is Emmy498. But yeah, you can find it there, and I post all my pictures that are available there.
So you are an amazing landscape artist, but you also work at the Dishman Art Museum at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas.
Yes.
So tell me about what it is you do there.
So I'm the admin for the Dishman Art Museum, so I do a lot of administrative work, where if we are preparing for a show, I'm the one that will put in all the orders that needed for, like, the banners, the show cards. I do the catering. I do a lot of, like, the background work to make the events happen. What I love about it is I'm still also able to help with the installation, the de-install. We have a fantastic museum assistant, Kyra Hall, who also does a lot of that work too. But it keeps me involved in the shows. So I'm always able to learn and see, oh, who's this artist? I've never heard of this person. Who are they? What's this show about? So I love being able to keep my ear to the ground of what's happening in the art community.
How do you know how to arrange the artwork? Like, whenever you, and honestly, I never even thought about this question until I was getting ready for your interview. Like, how do they know how to arrange the artwork? Like, I just walk in and I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. You know, I admire, and then I leave, but I don't think about, like, the back end,
Yes.
as we've been talking about.
Yes, so Dennis Keel, he is the director. He is fantastic, and I've been able to learn so much from him. It boils down to almost creating a narrative within the work where you're wanting everything to flow. He does this trick, and I love seeing it anytime a new exhibition comes up, where you'll have a piece where it'll be one thing, but there'll be a little splash of blue. And then there's an entire piece that is blue. So he'll put those two together because the eye is able to transition easy. So it's creating an experience that is able to highlight the work and best present it to the audience where they can easily absorb it. And a lot of this comes from planning, where we're moving pieces around. We'll lay all the pieces out, and then we'll physically arrange them of what will look best on the wall, what pieces will look best together. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but he does that trick of visually connecting everything. And it's so fascinating to watch him work.
Excellent, excellent. So whenever you or an exhibit is coming, are you allowed to insert, like, your own personal opinions and thoughts about which pieces go up?
Ooh, that's a great question. For me personally, I think personal opinion's always going to be had
Okay.
because it's art. You're going to have your own interpretation. As for the arrangement, there's times where we just had a previous exhibition where they sent us how they wanted the layout to be.
Okay.
But it didn't fit within the space. They wanted pieces where we typically don't hang artwork due to like safety. When we're having openings, it would be too congested. So then we talked to them and explained of, hey, we're gonna have to hang it this way because of reasons, and there's a bit of conversation with that. So I would say yes, there is a matter of opinion with arrangements, and it can be for various reasons. But typically with arranging the work, we always just try to present it as the best way we can for the audience to view it.
Do you have a target audience in mind when you guys are putting together the art exhibits?
Ooh. Yes, we try to appeal to the general public because we're a public museum. We're open, free admissions. So we generally know that our audience is going to be either our students, the art students, our art communities, or the general public. So we just try to, again, have that visual appeal where people can come in and absorb as much as they can. We'll have and that's why we have a lot of panels that will have text. Like we did one where Kyra, she was great for doing this. We had a printmaking show that had with it, we put out, there were folders and packets that explained all the different techniques because we knew people coming wouldn't necessarily know what does lithographs mean. What does this type of printmaking mean? So they could pick up the pamphlet and read it and go, oh, it's this process. So we kind of know it's going to be either people that understand art or people that don't.
When people come to an art exhibit, for example, the Dishman Art Museum here in Beaumont, Texas, what are they supposed to be looking at? Because especially novice people who are maybe just kind of getting into art, maybe just going into an art museum, really don't know what they're supposed to be looking at or feeling or seeing.
I think that's really something the viewer has to answer. When you come in, the biggest thing is just be open to whatever experiences you're about to have. Because every show is different, every arrangement is different, every art piece is supposed to have a specific feeling. But just because you don't feel what you're supposed to feel doesn't mean you're interpreting it incorrectly, because it's open to interpretation. So I would say just come in with the expectation of you're going to see some fantastic art and you're going to maybe have some feelings about them. And then you're just going to talk about them. So that's really all you can do.
I feel like an art museum is one of the very few spaces, probably in the world, where you can come and your thoughts and your opinions and your feelings are never wrong.
Correct. And that's why art is so divisive sometimes, because there's no wrong answer. It's purely open to interpretation, and that's why you have a lot of, with the ready-made and the Dada movement, why it's so more controversial or divisive, because there's no wrong answer, and people don't like that. People want to have an answer.
Listen, that is peace. That's what I call peace. When there is no wrong answer, that's what I call peace.
Me too.
Yes, my goodness. How long does it take to curate and put together an art exhibit?
That really depends. So if we're doing a local show with the planning and stuff, I would say it takes probably about 6 months. With one where we had to ship them in because they were coming across country, or we did a collaboration with a gallery, that one takes probably longer, 8 to a year. Because you have to plan everything out, you get the pieces together, the pieces might be coming from a completely different show, and then on our end, getting everything in place. So from start to finish, I would say 6 months to a year, depending.
When you're putting together an art exhibit and you're working alongside a curator, for example, do you have to have an eye for art to put it together?
I would say maybe not necessarily an eye for art, but an eye for detail. Because you don't necessarily have to be an artist if you're going into the curator field. They often prefer people that have education backgrounds too. But I would say there needs to be an eye for detail, because you're setting something up for people to view, and it needs to have a certain look. It needs to be able to flow right. It needs to fit into the space that you're given. So I would definitely say an eye for detail overall.
Do art curators interpret art?
Oh, absolutely. If you want to have a conversation, ask Dennis Keel about anything he puts up. I love picking that man's brain. He's so intelligent and knows so much about his field in art. I mean, anyone that's in the field will have opinions about everything, because that's what we're supposed to do. So yeah, absolutely. And it just happens naturally. It's not a bad thing, but there's artwork that you may really personally enjoy, and there's artwork you may personally not enjoy. It really just depends on the person.
Well, as we get ready to close up this interview, Emily, I have a few more questions
Of
for
course.
you, and then I'll let you go. What would you say is maybe your favorite art piece or your favorite artist?
Ooh. So a classic artist, she's one I always fall back to when I don't know, it would be Julie Bell. I saw her when I was a student here, and I instantly fell in love. My artists typically rotate, but she's a classic where I'll look at her. I looked at her for my thesis, or WLOP. I looked at him. Those would be my go-tos when it's like, I'm stuck in a rut. Let me see what they're doing, and then we'll go from there. My favorite art piece, I'll give you two. One that I made recently it's a piece called Bloodlines. It was one of my thesis work, and it, I think, hit that spark where I was like, that I want to do that. And it's very good, if I do say so myself. One of my classics, it's actually one that I found here in the Dishman's permanent collection. It's called it is called The Trial, and I actually have it in my office. But it's a lithograph, and it has this darker imagery of darker saturated colors where it's a figure and they're tied up, and it's placed in medieval, but it has this beautiful haunting feel about it that I find so interesting. So I would say that one.
Okay. If people want to come to the Dishman Art Museum and check out the exhibit, they're free. The entrance is free,
Absolutely.
Correct? What is the address, and what are the open and close times?
So we're open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturdays, depending if we're showing an exhibition. If we're open on Saturdays, we're open from 12 to 4. And our address is 1030 East Lalaca, Beaumont, Texas.
Perfect. My final question for you, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast, but you have to help me get them on?
Okay, definitely Erin Delion. She is our ceramic adjunct. She is a person where anytime she comes into my office, she loves art, and you can just tell by having a conversation with her of the passion for the process of creating these 3D objects. And the way she's able to push the students to create work is so fascinating. I think she would be great for your podcast.
Thank you.
Of course.
And thank you for bringing all of this energy to my podcast.
I love it.
It was amazing. And it was palpable. Like, I could feel it. I hope y'all could feel it. I could definitely feel it in this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. This is honestly a dream come true.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God. That makes me feel like, wow. Thank you.
Of course.
And thank you so much for tuning in, watching, listening, and learning. You can get this podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Come on, let's go on a journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry. Consulting, so inspiring, pushing you to your dreams. You can be anything. Oh, it goes with purpose. It's time to make it happen.